What's going on, guys? I'm Frank. Welcome to Ratchet and Frank TV. This is the second part of our trailer series. Today we're going to be adding support for this top rail, and we're going to be reinforcing the deck.
Oh, and it's gonna look good.
The first thing I want to tell you guys is I am by no means a professional welder. However, I do know the basics of it, but needless to say, I still make quite a few mistakes here. So as opposed to telling you guys what you should do, we're going to watch what I do and the mistakes that I make and what I did to correct them and how you can completely avoid them altogether. What I'm doing here is I'm adding a piece of bar that'll span from the underside of the wheel well to the base of the frame of the trailer. What I'm hoping this will do is kind of give the upper rail a little bit more support. Now I'm going to take measurements from the crossbars on the trailer and kind of think about how I want to go ahead and position my reinforcements. What I want to do is make 2 bars on both sides and then 1 directly down the middle. You can see the electrical harness runs through the trailer hitch under this first crossbar into this little pipe that acts as a conduit, then into the respective either hazard lights or the rear brake lights. I need to be careful while I'm cutting and grinding I don't mess up the harness. A quick trick with these bandsaws is obviously start with the foot against whatever you're cutting and then let the blade itself do the work and don't apply too much pressure because you can in turn dull the blade and maybe even get it stuck. Now, not necessarily that I don't trust myself, but because I didn't want the trailer falling apart when I was driving 70 miles an hour, I did the welding process 2 times. The first one was kind of to make sure that the fitting was all there, and the second time, I actually grinded to the roots of the welds and redid them all really well to make sure that they were kind of really strong. Something else I should have done while I was at this is I should have removed the paint from the original cross members before making my first welds. This paint will kind of add impurities into the weld, however, it's not the end of the world. These plates that I'm adding right now are good for 2 things. They're protecting the underside of the harness from flying rocks and debris, as well as they're going to act as mount points for tie downs that I'm going to put on in the future. For my first passes over these welds, I'm using E6011 3/32 Fleet Weld 180 rods at amperage ranging from 60 to 75 amps. The welder I'm using is a Lincoln 225 Tombstone alternating current machine. A general rule of thumb when you're welding is if it produces slag, you drag. You can see that when I'm doing my hot pass, I weld over the slag from the previous pass. This is a bad practice and you should definitely not follow me in doing so. You should always remove the slag before starting your next weld. Slag can allow moisture to get trapped underneath the weld and it could in turn ruin it. For the axle section of the trailer, I'm using a cut piece of angle iron going from the middle cross member to the side of the frame of the trailer. I'm doing this because the clearance between the bar and the axle wasn't enough if I just went straight. While you're taking measurements and getting your fittings, make sure you always leave an adequate gap for your weld. You want to make sure the weld has room to penetrate both pieces of metal and seal. Luckily, I finished all the fitting welding right before the rain started to come. So now I'm going to go ahead and grind down all these and grind them to their roots and then prepare them for another pass. When I say grinding to the root of the weld, I'm literally cutting a bevel where I did my original weld and preparing it to be properly redone. This time when I do my welds, I'm trying to make sure that the bead is at least 2 times the width of the original gap and that I'm penetrating all the way through. I'm going to fast forward through a majority of the re-welds just because I'm assuming you guys don't really want to watch them. With all of my welding done, I'm going to throw a quick coat of black paint on this, followed by a little bit of gloss to make sure that the rust will stop developing. I have a good feeling I'm going to end up welding again on the outside of this trailer, small mounting points for tie downs, so I'm not too focused on this paint job as I'll probably redo it in the future. A quick 2 coats of black and then a coat of gloss will do. Give her the good old jump test. Again, I'm not going to advocate that you go ahead and use an air gun to put your tires back on, but if you're going to do it, make sure that you're using torque sticks. With the wheel wells done, the bigger wheels on, and the frame complete, we're ready to take this thing to Home Depot and get some wood for the base. After perusing Home Depot's nice lumber section, I decided I'm going to use 5/4 inch, 12-foot pressure treated decking panels. A good buddy of mine came over and lent his hands as well as some of his tools that are going to help lay the deck itself. Mainly this plate joiner that we're going to use to make biscuit joins along the deck. We're going to use 3 biscuit joints per plank. We initially decided we'll make a couple segments and then join the segments as we go. I'm going to be bolting the wooden deck to the frame of the trailer using 1/4 inch bolts. I could have went with carriage bolts, but I like the industrial look of the hex nuts. Because I didn't have clamps big enough to reach the end of the planks and the frame, I decided I was going to use ratchet straps to hold the wood in place while I bolted it down. This ended up working really well. While I'm drilling through the frame of the trailer, I'm using a combination of oils in that little squirt bottle that have chemical properties pertaining to heat resistance, but not exactly lubrication. The idea behind this is I want to keep the heat off of the bit and keep it alive as long as I possibly can so I don't have to swap the bit before I finish making all of my holes. This is a common mistake people make when they're drilling through metal. When you're applying oil, you're doing it with the intent of keeping heat off of the bit, not necessarily lubricating the bit to move through the metal. Something else you may also notice us doing is pre-drilling the wood where I'm going to drill through the metal frame. I'm doing this to kind of make sure we get as much life out of our bit as we can. For the last piece, we'll do a quick rip cut using my buddy's table saw and get it into place. These chuck drills take a good toll on the hands when you're drilling through metal, so needless to say, I was very happy when I finished. In the next part of the series, we're going to address the electrical harness and add 4 amber deck lights onto the deck itself. I think this would look really cool and kind of spice it up a little bit.
As always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time on Ratchet and Frank TV.